to check back and listen to anything or see anything again. So thank you all so much for attending today. Will be kind of a wrap up for all of the results from our citizen science projects this year, which included nightjars, which were on common nighthawks and poor wills, which was our pilot year for this project with Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, and the Tracy Aviary. And then this was also our second year for Western and Eastern screech owls in the state, and then our 13th year for long-billed curlews. So thank you so much to everyone who participated in these surveys, spent time to go out and conduct surveys and collect data for these birds in need. And then thank you to all of our partners. So this year we got to partner with the Blackfoot Challenge and Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes for our curlew effort. And then for the Nighthawk surveys, we partnered with the Tracy Aviary and then Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. And then the Screech Owl project was supported by the LEAW Family Foundation. And then the Montana Natural Heritage Program manages all of the data that is submitted into Survey 123. So they are a huge help for these projects. So before I get into the results in this presentation, there will be a version of the results in the reports for each of our projects, and then an overall report going over in general how the citizen science program is going. So if you're interested in reading those and you haven't already, they are at our citizen science website on the homepage if you just scroll down, and that is montanabirdsurveys.weebly.com. So looking at our agenda for today, we will go over the overall results first and then jump into each project results. So we'll start with screech owls and then curlews and then nightjars, kind of following the survey windows for each project in 2025. And then after all of the specific project results, we'll go into where this data goes, what's next for our projects in 2026. And then afterwards, we'll open up to any questions if anyone wants to share any stories that they have from surveys or any feedback or suggestions for future years, that is always appreciated as well. So looking at our overall results, we had 221 citizen scientists join us for our 3 projects, and those 221 volunteers were able to conduct surveys at 167 survey sites, and that created an estimated total of 1,287 square miles surveyed around the state of Montana. And that number is based on the survey stops for each route, and then how many routes were conducted, and then the length of each route as well. So in total, we had 1,713 target birds recorded. So the target birds were just the species that each project focused on. So the incidental birds, like if you saw any like red-winged blackbirds or anything else, those would be an incidental. So those aren't counted in there. So that's probably closer to 2,000 if you want to count in every bird that we saw, but just the target birds, we saw 1,700, which is a huge and great accomplishment for all of our citizen scientists that participated in these projects. So this map shows all of the general areas that each survey was conducted in. So you could see that there was a huge survey effort in Western Montana, and then we had a growing survey base in Eastern Montana and Central Montana as well. So it's very cool to see that everyone is from different parts of the state, and we were able to have efforts in almost every part of the state, including the Highline, which was pretty new this year. So going into our specific project results, the first project that took place in 2025 was our screech owl project. This was our second year for this survey, and it started between March and the end of April. So surveyors went out 2 different driving routes after sunset, and they conducted playback call surveys at 10 points at least a mile apart. So a playback call is a recording of, in this case, eastern and western screech owls. And since screech owls are such a discrete species, the playback call evokes any local responses from any nearby owls. So for this project, we had 87 citizen scientists join us, and comparing to last year we had about 20, so this was a huge boost in the amount of people that were able to go out and try to listen for screech owls, which is pretty neat. So those 87 citizen scientists were able to conduct 58 surveys at routes, which is pretty big considering that around this time the snow is still melting and there's still areas where people can get stuck in the roads, especially in northwest Montana and western Montana. And so we had 444 miles of square miles surveyed in the state. So this survey took place statewide, so any area from the High Line to Bozeman to the Yak Valley. And throughout the state, we were able to get 24 screech owl observations. So 11 of those were western screech owls and 13 of those were eastern screech owls. And in total, we had 6 owl species observed. So even though this project focuses on screech owls, we also collect any incidental owl species. And then beyond all of the owl species, we also had 14 species recorded outside of owls. So you can see that list to the right over here. And if you want to look into further detail about all of the incidental species, they're also listed in each project report. So if you want to see if any specific species was noted in any of the projects, that information is in there. So for the owl species detected, we had both species of screech owls. We had 48 great horned owls, 3 long-eared owls, which was new to this year, a great gray owl, and then 5 northern sawa owls, totaling 81 owls for the year. So this map shows the area surveyed for our screech owl project. So you can see there was a huge survey effort in western Montana. And then new to this year, we also had a lot of surveys in eastern Montana as well, which is very exciting. And even a survey up in, it looks like Glasgow or up on the High Line. So looking at all of the owl observations from this year, we had 6 species, which that list is also to the right over here if you'd like to know where those species were and then the numbers. So you can see we had a lot of great horned owls this year. And then we also, new to this year, we had the great gray owl up in Lincoln County, up near the Canada border, and then 3 long-eared owls recorded on the same survey up in Broadwater County. So in 2024, we also had 6 total owl species observed, and species not recorded this year include boreal owl and then a few northern pygmy owls in the Helena Valley. And that kind of is a difference between where they're surveyed from. So those routes weren't necessarily repeated this past year. So going into more specific screech owl findings, we had all of the screech owl observations. They were this map shows the overlay of the established range for each species. So you can see the red is the western screech owl's established range in Montana, and then the blue is the eastern screech owl's established range. So this map shows kind of this this blank space where neither species is established into Montana, but that doesn't necessarily mean that sightings haven't occurred in this area. So during our survey, none of the observations occurred outside of their established range. And then the closest difference in space between western and eastern was about 91 miles, with the western up near York and then the eastern up in Fergus County. So potential overlap of the ranges has occurred outside of this survey with other observations. So there have been westerns observed up near Choteau County and then easterns all the way in Cascade County as well. So potential range expansion and observations for screech owls outside of the established range is possible, with suitable habitat, and then different management practices like nest boxes could also potentially expand each species range. So going into more of a watershed note, there was a cluster of eastern screech owls observed along the Yellowstone River near Billings. So this was pretty new this year. Last year, there was only 2 found in this area, but then this year there were 8 total across this circled area. So 10 out of 13 eastern screech owls observed in Montana this year were found within a 5-mile radius of the Yellowstone River. And then at the circled area, there were 5 sites with 8 owls. So 3 of those sites indicated multiple owls vocalizing, which might indicate possible nest sites, which is pretty exciting. And then yeah, so next we're gonna move into the curlew results. This is the 13th year of this project. And then over the years, the project has had a lot of changes in the protocol, the areas surveyed. So any comparisons between the routes from this year and the curlew observations from this year, they're compared to different routes in years that had similar results of different similar survey routes and then similar survey stop numbers as well. So this year, the long-billed curlew survey took place from the beginning of April through May, and it followed 2 survey windows that coincide with long-billed curlews pairing and then nesting periods. And volunteers go out and they do point count surveys in 3 valleys: the Mission Valley, the Blackfoot Valley, and then the Helena Valley. So within those valleys, we have established routes that have been around for many years. And this creates a good comparison of how the land use and the habitat are changing throughout each year, and then how that impacts curlews and how many records of curlews are there compared to, say, 13 years ago. So this year we had 58 citizen scientists join us, and those 58 were able to survey 45 survey routes, and that created an estimated total of 225 square miles that were surveyed. So across those 225 square miles, we had 82 long-billed curlews observed. 65 of those were during the point count 5 minutes where they're looking and listening for any curlews around them. And then 17 of those were in between survey points or just in the general valley. Those were also 17 curlews. And then outside of that, during the point count surveys, citizen scientists were also able to record 44 incidental species. So going into each specific valley, starting with the Mission Valley, we have a lot of help with survey efforts from the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes biologists. So we had 7 biologists go out and survey along with 22 volunteers, and they were able to survey 23 out of the 25 established routes in the Mission Valley, which is huge. And we haven't had this big of an effort in the Mission Valley or this much participation in a few years, which is pretty exciting. So during those 23 routes, we had 32 curlews recorded, and then comparing that to similar years with similar routes that were surveyed and similar stop numbers, those years were 2014, 2017, and 2024. The Mission Valley has experienced significantly less curlew observations compared to those years with similar numbers. And you could see a lot of the curlew observations from this year were concentrated up in the northern part of the valley as well. So moving into the Blackfoot Valley, this valley is managed by the Blackfoot Challenge. They organize all the volunteers and survey efforts. So we are just there to support them in this valley. And you could see a lot of the observations for curlews, which are in red, compared to the survey stops in black. They're just kind of scattered all around. They're pretty uniform throughout the valley. And we have 7 established routes in the valley, and 5 of those were surveyed by 8 volunteers and Blackfoot Challenge volunteers. But at these 5 routes, we had 24 curlews observed. And then comparing that to previous years, survey efforts have been pretty consistent throughout the years. So comparing that to previous years, the Blackfoot Valley has experienced a similar or even slightly elevated number of curlew observations between each year. So going into the last valley, which is the Helena Valley, there are 26 established routes, with 18 of those being surveyed this year. We had 27 volunteers, and we recorded 9 curlews. And one thing to note is that comparing before COVID and then after COVID, there have been significantly less, well, a significant less or decrease in survey efforts in this valley specifically, which is pretty interesting. And then comparing routes to previous years, less curlews have been observed, specifically in the Canyon Ferry area, which is this giant lake, and then in the northern region of the valley. So you can see there's a lot less curlews than there are routes compared to, say, the Blackfoot Valley or even the Mission Valley. And yeah, the Helena Valley has been experiencing a lot of development throughout the years as well. So comparing to previous years, this project started in 2012 around the state, but surveys in 2012, 2014, and 2018 also included a significant amount of routes outside of the 3 valleys, so they're not included in the chart below. So this graph shows the curlew observations and the survey stops, and kind of comparing the two between years. So this graph shows the years 2016, 2017, and then 2019 through 2025. And this shows a slight downward decline, but it's worth to note that there are a lot of moving variables with this data, including different surveyors in different years, different routes being surveyed each year, and then when the surveys are conducted, weather, time of day, and everything in between. So you could see in 2016, there was a huge amount of survey stops being completed. And then 2016 and 2017, we had over 200 curlews observed, and we haven't been able to get over 100 since then, which is pretty interesting. So moving on to our final project for this year. This was our pilot project with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks on Montana's nightjars, which included common porwills and common nighthawks. So this survey specifically targeted common nighthawks with the protocol, which was surveyors went out and did passive listening surveys statewide in areas where the state identified areas that were data deficient for the species. And they did passive listening surveys on roadsides in open areas and areas with suitable habitat. And so then that kind of differs a little bit from porwills, just because porwills are more of a nocturnal species and they prefer more shrublands and rocky outcrops as well. And they're both 2 summertime species that are technically found statewide in Montana, but both species are much more abundant, especially from these results, in the eastern part of the state where there are more grasslands and open areas compared to the forests and mountains of western Montana. So this project had 76 total citizen scientists with 62 volunteers, and then 14 state scientists join us as well and conducted survey efforts around Miles City and Billings. And they conducted 64 survey routes, which totaled an estimated 618 square miles surveyed around the state. And this project had the most amount of target birds observed, with about 1,600 nighthawks detected and 19 porwills detected, with an additional 50 incidental species recorded. And one fun fact about the incidental species is that this project was the only project that recorded all of our target species from each project. So just excluding eastern screech owls, but we had a western screech owl observation, porwills, nighthawks, and then we also had a few curlews in there as well. So going into the density of where nighthawks were observed, you can see on the left, this map shows a heat map of every survey stops throughout the site. So we had 618 survey stops, which is just each stop along a route. And then the map on the right also shows the heat map for the density but it just shows each of the observations of the curlews. So this map shows all 1,600 nighthawks that were detected in the state and where they were detected. So you could see there's a significant amount on the High Line in eastern Montana, and then there was also a few spots in western Montana around Helena and Great Falls that they were detected as well. So going into poor wills and incidental nighthawks. So incidental nighthawk detections were just nighthawks that were observed outside of each passive listening period during the survey. So that includes driving in between sites and then driving to and from the sites as well. So we had 137 incidental nighthawk observations and then 19 poor will observations as well. And those poor wills are once again just categorized as incidental sightings just because the protocol is specific to nighthawks and not specific to poor wills, even though a few of the routes this past year were routes that were previously done by the state as poor will surveys. So that kind of increased the likelihood of seeing poor wills just because it was better habitat for them. But they still followed the Nighthawk protocol. And then you can see here all of the poor will observations were found in eastern Montana, and they're found statewide, but they're much more common in eastern Montana compared to western Montana just because of their habitat needs. So now that we've gone through all of the survey results, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens with the data that everyone collects after they submit their Survey 123 forms or send in their paper data sheets. So after each survey is conducted, every Survey 123 form goes directly into Montana Natural Heritage Program state database, and then paper data sheets are submitted into Survey 123 as well. So all of the data goes directly to the state, and then the Heritage Program and FWP looks at that and they check for any potential errors, and then that also goes into the conservation statuses and the SWAP plan, which I'll talk a little bit about. But before all that, each data set is sent to us, and then we send it all to our project partners, and that's used to generate reports and presentations like this, just to tell everyone kind of how the project went, the findings of the project, and just informing the public and everyone involved. And then the data then goes to the distribution and population size that is known about the species in Montana. And that is used by the state to help form the statewide action plan, which kind of determines conservation statuses and then any plans and conservation actions for each species. So to talk a little bit about the statewide wildlife action plan, which the acronym is SWAP, this is made by Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and it's available to the public online if you're ever interested in learning any of the statuses on any species of greatest conservation need or information need or any species of concern. So this isn't just specific to birds, it's for reptiles, mammals, birds, fish, everything in between. And this kind of identifies conservation needs, statuses, and plans for all of Montana's wildlife using all of the wildlife and habitat data from surveys submitted by not only us, but we help with bird bird statuses and plans as well by submitting the data. So this plan identifies species of greatest conservation need, information need, as well as any other statuses and wildlife facing threats or lacking information. And this goes into planning for future monitoring and then action for species in need. So any action like, say, nest box monitoring for screech owls would be like a conservation action to help the species kind of thrive in more development and habitat loss. So by collecting data for these surveys, you're helping contribute to present knowledge about these species, which will help kind of say how they're doing and then any next steps to help them. So moving on to what's next for 2026. So I'm an AmeriCorps member, so my term is ending mid-November. So our avian specialist, Bo Crees, who I think is on the call right now, and then our next Big Sky Watershed Corps member, who will be joining January 2026, will be taking over the citizen science programs. So I think if Bo or Christian want to unmute and kind of introduce Bo or himself, and then talk about any of next year's projects.
Yeah, Bo, do you want to take it?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Some of you may know me from previous years. I've been an avian specialist for Montana Audubon and for the Montana Natural Heritage Program for 5 years now. And I'm excited to take over the project. Gwyn did such a wonderful, wonderful job, better than we've done in Montana Audubon in the past 5-6 years. So thank you, Gwyn, for just getting everything together and being so organized and getting so many participants to help us collect data for these important projects. And I hope a lot of you are gonna stick with us and help out in 2026 also. In 2026, some projects are still kind of in the air. But we already know that we're gonna change directions a little bit with the screech owl. Gwyn mentioned the SWAP, the State Wildlife Action Plan, and in the SWAP, during the SWAP process, we kind of assess the information, the data needs for a lot of different species of concern, including the screech owls, long-billed curlews, and we found that we have a lot of great information. A lot of it is based on is because of all the citizen science effort that you've contributed to. But we have a lot of information about where the birds are and population size. And so we might change trajectory a little bit. And with screech owls, for example, since we know where they are and we got a good grasp of their abundance and range in Montana, we might try to, we're planning on kind of moving to the next stage of what can we do to help them. So Gwen showed you that there's an area that's kind of like an in-between zone for the two species. And we think that in a lot of places around Montana, the reason we're not seeing any screech owls or low numbers of screech owls is because they don't have a lot of cavities to nest in, natural cavities to nest in. And we suspect that if we deployed a whole bunch of nest boxes for screech owls, and this is after some extensive conversations with the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Park, but we and they think that we can really help screech owls in Montana by assembling and then deploying a lot of screech owl boxes around the state. And then we'll be able to actually provide them with quality nesting habitat, which is the next step in helping this species. So I hope that some or all of you will be able to contribute to that. And there's going to be a lot more information about it later this year and probably even more so into 2026. And then another project that we're going to take on that we have to still talk about quite a bit is colonial waterbird surveys. And these might be a little more involved, more complicated. They may require some folks to actually use various water vessels like canoes or kayaks. And so it might be a little more limited, but if you have experience with waterbird surveys, or if you're interested, that might be a really fun and different kind of citizen science project to participate in. And then because we determined that we have a lot of good information about common poor wills in Montana, we're going to switch to Nighthawk only surveys in 2026. So we're going to drop the common poor will component of the surveys and make a big effort towards Nighthawk surveys across Montana. And yeah, so that's something that I hope some of you are looking forward to. I'm excited about it. And yeah, there's going to be a lot more to talk about when it comes to opportunities to contribute and help in the coming year. Anything I forgot, Christian?
No, thanks, Bo. My name's Christian Meny, I'm Director of Conservation at Montana Audubon. And yeah, we're really looking forward to the projects coming on in 2026 and looking forward to Bo's leadership on those. We can't thank you all enough for the work you did in 2025. The Citizen Science Program at Montana Audubon was truly a success. Participation really grew, and the citizen scientists provided high quality data on all the species that we looked into this year. And therefore, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has decided to fund us for the next 2 years, and we move on to these new projects. And then lastly, I just want to thank Gwen Rohde. She has been amazing, and much of this growth is due to her commitment and her just intelligence and just organization and her effort. And so we will really miss her here at Montana Audubon, but she's on to other great things, perhaps graduate school. I guess we'll see, maybe, and very likely more bird research. So yeah, so again, thanks to all the citizen scientists, and thanks, Gwen, for putting on this presentation this evening.
Thank you both. So yeah, that's something to be excited about for next year. Moving on to another fun thing that's happened this year. So Christian and then our communication specialist, Lauren, who's also on this call, were selected to write kind of the feature article for the fall newsletter. So if you guys received the newsletter in your inbox, you might see a curlew on the cover, and then the feature article is going to be about all of our citizen science projects, the growth throughout the years. And I'm not sure if Connie's on this call, but she submitted some really cool nature journaling from her curlew observations and curlew surveys. So I would definitely recommend checking those out. Christian and Lauren did a great job writing this article, and yeah, so this would not be possible without everyone involved, everyone that went out and surveyed, spread the word, tracked us down at tabling events, just talked to us about the curlews in their yard or everything in between. So thank you all so much. And now we're going to open it up to questions, any stories that anyone would like to share from their surveys, and then any suggestions or feedback for future years as well.
I just want to say that I think Gwen's done a great job of being so organized and professional, and really just been excellent at your job. And I hope we see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to add, Christian and Gwen kind of alluded to this, or maybe they said it, but it was because of the huge success of the different citizen science projects in 2025 that Gwen led and so many of you have participated in, that Fish, Wildlife, and Parks really felt like they can kind of take it to the next level. They've gotten so much fantastic data from all of our citizen science volunteers, and they realized, man, this is a fantastic way to do surveys across Montana with people that know their birds and are passionate about them. And so we've gotten better feedback from them and more support from Fish, Wildlife, and Park than we've ever received in the past. And all of it is because of all of you citizen science volunteers did such amazing job, and for all of Gwen's efforts.
Thank you, Bo. So yeah, if there's any more questions. Not sure. I don't see anything in the chat. But
I just wanted to say that the preparation was very good and made it easy. So
thank you.
thank you.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, if you want to know any of the history of any specific routes that you've done, especially with the Curlew results, or if you want any more information on anything that was presented during this, or anything in general about these species, feel free to email me at gwen@montanaAudubon.com. So I will send out the recording as soon as I get it posted on YouTube tomorrow. So you should expect an email from me with the YouTube link to this video, probably sometime tomorrow afternoon.